So, The Rise of Skywalker. There are a lot of problems with this film. The story is all over the place, and at the start of the movie, I was sure there's no way they're gonna be able to cover everything that they set up in the next 2 hours. Plot points are basic and predictable. Some things are painfully obvious, like who's gonna be the mole, and Kylo Ren will turn, and Leia will die. Rey will win over the bad guy, etc. This predictability doesn't have to be a bad thing. In fact, I kind of appreciated it, but the script still isn't great. Dialogue is the worst offender here. Information is just like hammered into your head. Every important line is spoken at least twice, often more. And every joke is repeated like 3 times just to make sure you get it. Not much is left up to visual storytelling, even though this is a movie, which is kind of a shame. I'd like to see this film with half the dialogue cut. I think just that would vastly improve the movie. It's like everything is extra in this film. Extra dialogue, extra spaceship. At one point, the whole screen is filled with like Star Destroyers, and as well as like the little rebel ships, and it's just too much, man. And there's extra explosions. Everything explodes in this film. It's really weird. Like every ship that crashes, it just blows up. Even just like this single flying stormtrooper just kind of explodes out of nowhere. It's so weird. And the Force is extra, of course. Now it can heal people and make thunder and explode things. Then there's the characters who come back from the dead. Like, I get it in the case of the Jedis. Like, that's been a thing for a while now. But Rose? I could have sworn she died in the last movie, in this like big love sacrifice or some shit. I guess I was wrong. And of course Han Solo comes back for a while, and it's kind of nice actually. I like him and I like his moment with Kylo. But he's not really a Jedi, so it doesn't make that much sense. I mean, at some point I just kind of accepted that things weren't necessarily literal, and that things like Han Solo coming back, it was just more like a internal projection for Kylo, which is how I made sense of it in my head. The stakes feel so low on like a character level. Like, not a single rebel dies in this movie, I guess except for Leia, but that was only because she died in real life. Even though the entire galaxy is at stake in this war, it doesn't feel threatening at all, because all the characters we follow are always okay. Chewbacca has like a fake death, but 2 seconds later it's revealed that he's not really dead after all, and it's like the dumbest plot point ever, and it doesn't even lead to anything. The cuts and editing in this film are very jarring at times. Scenes often lack a point of view and thus feels disorienting. Many times it feels like the scenes are missing an establishing shot, or even just like a medium shot to see where we are or what the characters are looking at. For example, there's like this shot of Finn looking out of the Millennium Falcon, and he's like calling for Rey, but like she's miles away from him, like underground, under a cave thing, and I was just like, is he looking at her, or what exactly is he doing in this scene? There are some new characters, and they are new. To understand them, the script uses shorthand rather than exploring what they're truly about, like with Poe's old girlfriend or the stormtrooper deserter. There's no depth to them, and their motivations are explained through dialogue in like one conversation alone. I hate to say this because I didn't make this film and the story doesn't belong to me in any way, But I really wished for something more for Finn and his ex-stormtrooper story. I think there was room for something to be explored there, but instead we're served this, well, the stormtrooper babies are rebelling now, and there's nothing more to it. No depth or exploration, which feels like a truly missed opportunity. Lastly, the humor was a big miss for me. I'm not going to say it's bad because humor is subjective, but I did not laugh at the jokes in this film. I don't mind the attempt at humor. Without it, the film would be incredibly grim, but the constant echo of jokes being told 2 or 3 times gets really grating after a while. I settled for an eye roll rather than letting that ruin the film for me because, well, there were surprisingly a lot of things to enjoy here. The Rise of Skywalker has some gorgeous images. Despite his shortcomings, I've always enjoyed J.J. Abrams' films for what they are, which is love stories to cinema. While the film falls short in many areas, just a few of JJ's cinematic shots really make up for a lot of the unfortunate cuts. This film looks great a lot of the time. Its color palette feels fitting for this kind of space adventure. Even when sets are bland or repetitive or crowded, at least it looks nice. Everything with Rey and Kylo Ren, which can appear awkward location-wise at some times, still pleases visually because of the camera's ability to capture them at perfect angles. Speaking of Rey and Kylo, I loved their story and they really saved this movie for me. Kylo Ren has been the best setup character in this trilogy, and that finally pays off here. He's been the immature and bratty villain who honestly just needed some love, and instead of turning Rey, he is turned by her. His redemption comes at the cost of his life, and everything about him is beautifully captured to the very end. I adore his confrontations with his parents, which display what his inner journey was truly about, without so much of the extra, just a bit of it. He was never the one luring Rey to the dark side, it was always the other way around. He grappled with himself because he could not shred the light in him, and while some people have complained about the Vader-esque switch of his character, I honestly think they are very different characters. While they ended up in the same place, their journeys to get them there were completely unlike one another. And it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. The real treasure was the friends they made along the way, and finally that trope is done in a satisfying way, because Kylo doesn't win in the end. He doesn't get the girl, he doesn't get to be a hero, he doesn't even get to live. It hurts so much, but I love it. Rey is more of a mixed bag. I've never had anything against her, but she always lacked some characterization. It's nice to see that she finally gets training, but even now I feel like she doesn't have a strong personality. But honestly, I don't really mind. I mean, I don't love her, but I do like her. Her story has never been about whether she would turn to the dark side, but whether she could save Kylo from it. And I get that now. Like, I don't care about her Palpatine twist, like, okay, they bring him back and that's kinda cheap and cool at the same time. But like, did anyone think she would really become a Sith Lord? I mean, that could have been cool, but that's not the story they were trying to tell, and that's okay. So I think the main problem with Rey's character is kind of the thing that she represents in the greater picture. Like I said, I don't have anything against her, but I don't like this thing where, because we've been asking for better female characters for a while now, or we want like strong female characters in Hollywood, that kind of translates to invincible, stone cold women who can fight and never feel anything, and is always, you know, right or better in some way, and never show any kind of vulnerability. And that's not really what we mean by we want strong characters. What we want are characters that feel like real people, not just invincible women, you know? And sometimes I feel like Rey is not that bad, because sometimes she shows vulnerability, especially in regards to her parents, which is why I guess I kind of like her a little bit, I guess. But it's still too much, I think. She's still too strong in terms of like her powers and how they come from nowhere, and you know, how she's made out to be this kind of chosen one character, and it just doesn't seem like it has a proper origin. It's like Hollywood is afraid of showing female characters who feel things, right? They can never cry or never show any kind of emotion. And this grinded me really the wrong way, especially for Rey's kind of love story in Star Wars. I mean, I like her love story with Kylo. I think it was really emotional, but it's like they never talk about it, and she kind of just ignores Finn's feelings, for example. She never addresses them. Not that she has to, but it's kind of just left untouched. It's almost touched upon, but it's really bizarre how that's never resolved in any way. It's like Hollywood thinks that strong female character means that they have to be physically stronger than everyone else in their film, which we also see in Captain Marvel. But I'll get to that. That's not what we mean, you know? We just want rounded characters. We just want character that has a function other than being the female or the love interest. And that's why I don't really mind what Rey's doing here. I think that she is a bit too strong physically and, you know, like with the Force, but that doesn't really bother me that much because we've seen this kind of trope before in Star Wars. The very best part of the film is the relationship between Rey and Kylo. That's been the best part of every film. The fact that Kylo can't bring himself to kill her is a testament to his respect and fear and love for her, and that's such a beautiful and human story. I wasn't a fan of The Last Jedi, but the whole spiel about winning not with hate but with love suddenly makes a lot of sense here. My favorite moments are when the two team up and work together. They discover new ways to utilize the Force, and their connection is so convincing because their actors are great. I love everything about them when they're together. Kylo's sacrifice and death hurt so much, but this ending feels incredibly satisfying because given what we've established in this trilogy, it kind of makes sense. He's done far too much harm for it to end any other way, but he is able to overcome his inner turmoil and acknowledge his feelings. I love that. It's sad but fitting. I'm obviously biased because I love effort, I love hype, I love JJ, I love Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley and John Bodega. Like, a lot of what I like about this film isn't necessarily about the film itself, but I didn't love Star Wars. A lot of the negative criticism I've seen for this film draws parallels between it and the older Star Wars films, and I'm starting to think that's not how we should do it. I get it. The fanboys love their empire and they want to capture the feeling they had when they first discovered Star Wars, but it seems they forget that they've grown up since then. Judging the Rise of Skywalker through this Star Wars lens seems very unhelpful and it doesn't really serve anyone. Saying things like this film doesn't feel like Star Wars isn't constructive because what feels like Star Wars to you is entirely different from what feels like Star Wars to me, and that kind of argument grinds me the wrong way. Every fan had a preconceived notion of what they wanted to get out of this film, and a lot of them are disappointed that what they got was something else because they based their love of the franchise on a nostalgic lie. And I get it, I've done the same thing. I came out of The Last Jedi feeling utterly destroyed and I hated what they had done with Star Wars back then. I was upset with the creative choices and I spent a lot of time pondering that. I read every review and I watched every video essay under the moon about it and I could not understand how anyone could like it. That film killed my care for the franchise. But it also freed me. Okay, here's the truth. I've never been that into Star Wars. I've seen the films like once or twice and I thought they were okay. I think I pretended to be more into it than I was because I wanted to be part of a fandom. But in all honesty, I never truly bonded with it. That's why when The Force Awakens came around, I was really excited because it felt like my chance to finally get it. And I had a lot of faith in JJ and in the studio and in the whole project, and I kind of liked it. In fact, that was my first favorite Star Wars film, and I could latch onto that as someone who hadn't been a Star Wars fan before. And I feel like it's because I was never that into Star Wars that I was able to enjoy The Rise of Skywalker so much. I adored this film despite all its flaws, because at the core there was a feeling that resonated with me and with the me that I am right now and with the things that I am living through. I don't care about Star Wars. I just care how it made me feel. And I think the fans would never have been happy no matter what they got. I don't know what they wanted or expected from this movie. I truly don't, because I didn't get on the hype train this time. I just went in with the lowest possible expectations and I was pleasantly surprised by a semi-coherent story and a core I could understand. I've read a lot of harsh criticism for The Rise of Skywalker, and I think it comes from a desire to return to a feeling that's lost to time. But this kind of critique seems so disillusioned to me. It's like the film doesn't belong to the fans. This film is Disney and Lucasfilm and JJ's vision. I don't know why anyone expected anything else. The Rise of Skywalker wrapped up its story in a simple, somewhat cluttered, but altogether neat way. The conclusion, though bittersweet, feels incredibly satisfactory to me as a new fan of this trilogy. And it's a shame that fans of the original fail to see that distinction. This isn't their Star Wars. This is my Star Wars.